Are we good to go? Are we live?
We're good. We're good, Jeff.
Welcome to another edition of Deep Space Nine and Nine-ish. We're here continuing our 3.5 year journey, recapping every episode of Star Trek DS9. I'm your host, Jeff Mater, bringing you on this trek for DS9. My co-hosts here, Dave Mater and Kevin Millard, and we are momentarily waiting for Jaemeel. So that'll be great when he comes. Let's dive right into this episode because I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was, I thought it grabbed me right from the beginning. It was one of my favorite episodes that we've done thus far. That's just kind of what I felt right off the bat. Dave, what are your first initial takes of this episode?
Yeah, this episode, the name of the episode being Whispers, and it is the conspiracy theory episode, or I guess the whole world has gone crazy situation. Kind of, maybe a science fiction trope of the early part of the 20th century. A lot of short stories revolved around this kind of premise, and I think that it's well executed here, especially. I remember seeing this in first viewing back in the 90s, and I was quite taken with this episode. I think it's one of the more memorable O'Brien episodes in some ways, even though it ends up not being an O'Brien episode. It ends up being this imposter episode. But because we follow this character, their point of view throughout the whole story, it gives you this great level of empathy with the character, I think, and ultimately this character dies, and we learn it's a Manchurian candidate replicant version of O'Brien, but I think really speaks to how there's a soul sometimes behind those kinds of things. I think that the final words here, Keiko, I tell her I love her, and O'Brien's
Right.
like, yeah, I guess, okay,
Right. Over at Superman Brothers Podcasting, we've been talking about Westworld. We recapped the last season. Did this give you some vibes of Westworld toward the end of the episode?
No, I wasn't thinking necessarily Westworld per se, but I understand why you would connect with that. I'd say that it was more more like Outer Limits, Twilight Zone type story for me in a lot of ways. I think it was well done. I think that the fact that they're just so weird about it with him. I know, like, their whole argument here at the end is like, there was no way to prove he wasn't you. Okay, but
Really?
you had reasonable suspicion to sort of like at least not let him be around Molly O'Brien and whatever, because Keiko's on to him right from the from the second he's there, right?
He was having coffee in the afternoon.
Yeah.
All throughout this episode, so she knew.
We already learned this, Dave. We've already.
He said no. He already told her he'll drink coffee whenever. Last episode, like in that other.
He doesn't believe him.
Okay, Kevin, what do you do? All right, you said you weren't aware of the Blade Runner reference that I made. That this is just the Blade Runner version of Star Trek. But regardless of that, I'm sure you've seen like a Total Recall, or you've seen,
yes.
Like, there are movies, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, that this episode drew for a lot of inspiration from. What do you think?
I think this is the best episode of Star Trek where nothing happens. It's boring, but it's intriguing at the same time because everybody is acting weird. And I like how they kind of switch it around from what they usually do in Star Trek. Usually when someone is experiencing something like this, they're right. They're either in a bubble or in a dream world or on a holodeck. But this time, it's this clone in with all the actual people, and they switch it around on you. I think it's really clever, and it holds your attention through the whole thing, even though the episode's kind of boring. Nothing really happens.
See, I don't find it boring at all. I found it very gripping because what they did was they put O'Brien as the point of view character. Everybody else is acting weird. We're on O'Brien's side the whole time. We're kind of going, why are all these people acting weird? There must be something wrong with O'Brien. Even he says that himself when he's in sick bay, and they're doing Bashir's trying to do the physical on him for like 3 hours to try to figure out if he's a replicant or whatever. And just everything about O'Brien is you're on his side. You're like, why are all these people acting weird? How is there just this giant conspiracy where everybody is against O'Brien?
What I mean by nothing happens is there's no big exciting
Right.
thing. It's just this mystery throughout the whole thing, which is gripping. It holds your attention.
Exactly.
Even though nothing is happening.
Jeff, turn up your mic a bit, eh? You're just a bit low.
Kind of like like you are with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall, or you are with Harrison Ford in Blade Runner. You have those same feelings of like, I want to know what's going on here, and I have to figure it out, and the character has to figure this out, so I must figure it out with the character. Is kind of how you watch these, and it's really clever, like you said, and it's very great the way they ended it. I thought it was a very concise episode. For me, it didn't drag. I really just thought it was solid.
I forget which one of you said it, but you feel for this character too, even as he's dying, and you know it's not O'Brien.
Right.
You still kind of feel for him. It's I do really like this episode. This is probably the best episode so far of at least season 2.
I'd say since we've started, it's the best episode. Like the only
why doesn't Odo explain anything to him? Why do they have to be so mean to him? Does this episode not make you dislike the other characters on the station more?
Well, Odo initially believes everything he's saying because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
And so, like, again, that's another moment where you're like, oh, okay, so maybe O'Brien's not crazy, and then Odo turns, and you're like, it has to be a dream, or he's like in a holodeck, or it has to be something like that, right? That's kind of what your head probably starts doing, but it's not. It's all real. He just happens to be a robot, and you never really saw that coming, like in a lot of ways. And it's well done.
What about his whole when they finally confront him in Odo's office, right? Mm-hmm. And he throws that little
his Batman bomb.
His Batman bomb. He was like, awesome. And then he shoots 2 guys, and then he runs off, and then he evades them by hiding in like the Jeffries crawl space, steals a ship, turns off. Like, it's impressive. It's
Kevin. How dare you say nothing happened?
Okay, well. No, nothing happened. That wasn't even exciting. That's standard Star Trek right there.
You didn't like what?
Everybody gets away in the Jeffries tubes. How come nobody ever looks in the Jeffries tubes?
How come they can just put
right there?
How do they not have a tricorder that just tells them, oh, he's over there in the Jeffries tube, or a tricorder?
Or why can't they just put a force field up in the Jeffries tubes?
I need answers. I think Lower Decks should totally explore some of these questions in the future if they in season 2, because there's a lot of especially on Deep Space Nine, and just Odo as a security chief. I need to understand more here. Why is he so bad at this? Why is it so easy to hide on this station? In general, this is one of the few times, Jeff, tonight we saw the station fire its phaser beams before, at any point. We'll see it later on in the show. But here we had green phaser beams, and I couldn't help but think about. I know you guys aren't fans, but I couldn't help but think about Babylon 5, which famously, in many episodes had the Star Furies come out, because it was more of like an aircraft carrier almost thing with all these different fighters that would come out. And Deep Space Nine didn't have a lot of action in these first 2 seasons in terms of what the station's doing, in terms of in the other shows, the ship is hero of the show and gets to do all this action, at least sometimes. But this was, that stood out to me, because I was just like, we're still in season 2. We got these dinky little runabouts, and we got this station that barely does anything, and apparently it's so easy to turn off their upper pylons, Jeff. You can their tractor beams
and hack into their security files and figure out what they were what their logs were saying when he was being locked out.
Also, of course, the 2 places that would be the least defended in the Federation would be Earth and the most important station in the entire quadrant. They're going to just have runabouts and 1 broken ship on each of those, and that's it.
He goes through that wormhole pretty easily without much, problems. Like,
No,
you know,
yeah.
like, yeah. There's the
All he
The
has to do
wormhole
is
was
reroute.
fiction.
Yeah, he just has to reroute emergency power from life support to shields,
Yes.
and the computer's like done, and then that's it. That's all you need to do to get away.
there is a lot of O'Brien talking to the computer in this episode. Like if you looked at the
it's kind of
script,
his Pale Moonlight episode.
yeah, it is because he's doing a lot of narration. Yeah, this is kind of Pale Moonlight before Pale Moonlight. There's a lot of structure that in that story that is in this one, and it works really well.
Yeah, because I have my Alexa, set as computer for the wake word, right? And so in this episode, because I'm in the living room, we have it all around, and it just was going off haywire. I don't know how many times he says the word computer, Jeff, in this episode. It's got to be like north of 100, right? It was like every 2 seconds,
Yeah,
and he could have said it more. He was talking to the computer for the entire episode. And so it's almost like a diary because it is like a series of personal logs and coming to grips and then you find out it's not the real O'Brien, but you don't even really care at that point. You just want this guy to be okay, and sort of someone to tell him it's all right. But by that point, he's already shot.
explain this to me though. How do they know if they can't tell the replicant is the replicant? How are they sure that the real O'Brien is the real O'Brien? Like, why are they like nobody on the crew seems to think that the replicant is the real O'Brien? They're all you except Oda when he first comes on the station because he doesn't know what's going on. But everybody seems to know for sure, 100%, this is a replicant, but they can't prove it.
But just because they can't prove it doesn't mean they can't talk to him about the suspicions. Unless the only thing I could think, the only rationale I could have is like, well, let's assume he is the replicant, and if we tip him off, that could get O'Brien killed, like the real O'Brien, if they find out this cover is blown. So that was the only thing I could think, but they don't explain that. So that's the only maybe loose end I think that they don't neat up rapidly in like the 44 minutes they had. Why couldn't Admiral Rollman say something like, hey,
or Cisco at some point have a Cisco scene where we get to see something after the fact where he describes something.
Yeah. Kevin, what kind of sexy letters do you think that O'Brien wrote about his wife, and do you think that Cisco did enjoy reading about them?
I don't know what the contents of those letters would be, but I'm sure that Cisco enjoyed reading them. He seemed like he would enjoy that.
Jeff, do you think so?
Yes.
Yeah. He's like, I hope they liked read the sexy letters to my wife.
Probably a bunch of letters about Julian.
Yeah.
And was it creepy when Replicant O'Brien tried to like make the moves on Keiko?
Only because she reacts so weird. Here, I got the photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
good. It's a good episode too because it's an O'Brien episode, but it's very little Keiko and no Orion Syndicate.
And yeah, like no Molly. Really like even though the Molly episode's pretty good, but this episode also I enjoyed because O'Brien's the one's like, that's not my Keiko. It's actually Keiko who thinks that's not my O'Brien. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. What was in that stew? Was there something wrong with that stew that he wouldn't eat?
I don't think it would have mattered. I think he's a robot. He wouldn't have died anyway.
Why? That's a good question, though. Why was she being so weird? Why wouldn't she just make, if there's nothing in the stew, why wouldn't she just make something that they would both eat and not upset him? Like, why
make it so weird? Yeah, like, because she was only in this weird salad, right?
It makes you think that there must be something in there, but why wouldn't they just stun him? Why all of a sudden?
I don't know.
Yeah, and then like he gets up the one morning and Molly and Keiko are already up. Then he goes to start his job, and the guy's already doing his job. And he's like, "What the freak is going on here?" He's like, "Everybody is way earlier than me, and I'm early." That would annoy me too. I would. I'd be like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, it was just odd. It's odd how the staff deal with him, right? And the words they choose to use and not use with him. and like they have opportunities to sort of make this better, but they're so vague with him, especially Keiko, who because like I get that, and like why put it was just, and Molly was being weird. Did they tell Molly that this wasn't the real Chief O'Brien, or could she just tell because she was a kid?
I think
maybe he actually is just being a kid and just.
Or was this what she would have said to the real O'Brien anyway?
Keiko told the fake O'Brien not to take it personally and to let it go. Would she have told real O'Brien the same thing? Yeah, it's a good question. Would Molly have said the same thing to the real O'Brien? Probably.
Would Keiko have said the same thing? No. I think if she were to real O'Brien, she would have said, "No, you deserve that."
Or
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, she might have. Yeah.
She definitely would have. She would have. I don't know what he would have done to deserve
that.
it.
And here's 5 reasons why.
Yeah. Sometimes I just think that Keiko sucks, man. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, poor. But then
with her, sometimes she's fine, and then other times I'm like, what? Would you just shut up?
Yeah. Like, sometimes she's written to be super annoying and like and to get the like I got to do something about this.
And Rosalind Chow leans into it hard. You know, she's like, "You want me to be naggy? I will give you that."
Yeah, you want my best naggy? I'll give you my best naggy.
Yeah. Well, I think she's great. I just think it's not a well-written character.
No, she's all over the place. She's over a major. She's growing plants, and she has a daughter, and then like she's
grading papers.
Yeah, she's grading papers early in the morning, and then she's for some reason got a robot husband right now, and then that'll next week she'll be infected,
possessed by demons, and there's lots going on.
Keiko's had a lot of a rough ride.
My favorite thing about O'Brien is he's always ready to go and settle Cisco's hash. Like he's always ready, but his wife never.
Remember that time Keiko got turned into a 12-year-old with Picard and Guinan and Valerian?
Guinan. Okay, so anything else on this episode that kind of like stands out to you guys? Like, I mean, for me, it's like it's Blade Runner. It's Total Recall. But just Star Trekified, and I enjoy it. I mean, there's a lot of great things.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's okay. It's like it's one of these interesting. Oh, there he is. We were doing this the other night.
Jaemeel, welcome to Deep Space Nine and Nine. Jaemeel Robinson joining the panel here on Deep Space Nine and Nine. What did you think of Whispers, Jaemeel?
Why did I need to watch this episode?
You didn't like it? You've already seen Blade Runner?
I've seen Blade Runner, and I'm actually put to care about the character that's involved. What's the end resolution of this? Do they just put Scrap O'Brien in like a Jeffrey's tube and just keep him there?
Yes, for safekeeping.
Do they keep him for dissection purposes?
Yes.
It seems ultimate. Like what comes of this episode? What do we learn from this episode?
That there's possibly secret I think. All right. Here's the deal. Before they had the changelings, and they knew they wanted to do people who could like be other people or have copies. I think they wanted to do the Battlestar Galactica idea in Deep Space Nine. They didn't know how they were going to do it yet, and this was one of their ideas, maybe to introduce people who have replicants. That's kind of what I took from it. And I was like, oh, it's like an early start of that. And then they came up with something else later when they had the changelings, which made a lot more sense.
Thankfully. There's parts of it I enjoy as an episode, but then it just seems so sloppily and lazily concluded at the end. It's like, what's behind the door? It's like, it's O'Brien. Hey, right?
Well, that's Star Trek, though. Especially these early seasons of Deep Space Nine. You get there's like a whole long story, and then they're like, and it's over.
I was like, I was watching the episode. I was like, there's nothing behind that door, O'Brien. They open it. It's like Julian. I'm like, that's right. Shoot them. They tricked you. And then they shot him. and I was like, oh.
Yeah, I thought that guy should have been held more accountable. The guy who killed Replicant O'Brien, but unnamed Paradin rebel. Jaemeel, for me, what I was left feeling with this episode is that the senior staff of Deep Space Nine, particularly Sisko and Julian Bashir, maybe, and also Keiko, was very complicit in this very mean treatment of, which is basically, it's still a life form, right? Like, it's still obviously a sentient, capable life form that maybe had this secret like sleeper mission, kind of like Boomer in Battlestar Galactica. Jeff, yes, maybe a good. I don't know if Ronald D. Moore had joined this cast yet, but this has sort of airs of or this writing team. I mean, at this point, but
so can I go on Battlestar Galactica podcast and claim that Battlestar Galactica ripped off DS9?
Well, I think maybe Deep Space Nine ripped off Battlestar Galactica anyway, because they ripped off like kind of like Babylon 5, even though they came first, because everything was like in production for a long time, right? So it takes a long time, and the ideas are floated around and thought about. And then they're like, "Oh, that would be good for our show," and then they go and they adapt it, right?
Who actually is there to actually support Babylon 5 in the first place? No one that we think is worth listening to.
I was talking about. I already talked about it tonight before you joined. I was talking about how this station does not have like the great space action like Babylon 5 did by its second season. No way.
No way. Not even close.
Not even
Great.
close.
I'll never know.
I did listen to Kevin's amazing trivial debates of Babylon 5, where he's like, I'm prepared to lose this because I'm never going to watch another episode of this show.
No.
I've thrown it in the towel.
A limited number of us out there, Babylon 5 fans.
Okay,
you know
so
I might have given you that point just based on that. That's a passionate argument.
So Jaemeel, are you saying you didn't really like this episode? It was kind of blah for you?
I'm left feeling cold, and Dave, you absolutely touched upon parts of it. It's like, okay, so you know that this is possibly not O'Brien, right? And you're gathering more information to find out exactly what's going on. But at the same time, you're leaving a possible enemy, a sleeper agent, with Keiko, with Molly, with Jake, with members of your entire station. You just completely left there of their own devices. Like one security guard or two security guards got phasered. They could have been disseminated. He could have had phasers set to kill.
They also gave him.
There would have been two people.
Yeah, but we don't know anything from Sisko and Kira and all those characters' perspective. Like, we don't know that
it's still sloppy.
Agreed,
they're taking a chance.
Of course they are, but the maybe it's the other O'Brien was being held hostage. Like, we don't know anything about what was going on on the other side of the story.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like criticize it because like we have no idea. Like,
I wonder, the one person who didn't speak in this episode from the senior staff was Dax. Yeah. I wonder if she was the one who was on the other side saying, "You guys are being dicks to this guy," and she wouldn't even go. She wouldn't even go on the mission to the Gamma Quadrant at the end.
Yeah,
she wasn't there.
She's like, "What could I do to distract O'Brien? I could sleep with him."
Yeah.
And then Kira's like, I could be a prostitute.
That was the plan she brought to the meeting. She was like, well, I could do this.
Just like, Keiko doesn't seem to want much O'Brien right now. So, so I'll take a little of that Irish hog.
Yeah.
Jamaican double sweet. Double strong, double sweet.
Double strong, double sweet.
Jamaican blend.
Yeah, Jamaican blend. Is there deleted scenes for this episode? Because if there's like calm meaning going, "Hey Mon," I would die of laughter.
That would be
Yeah, like the was this the only time that O'Brien drank this specific Jamaican coffee? Because I know we established that he will drink coffee, but now it's getting more
No.
specific.
No, he ordered it last episode, and I believe he ordered it the episode before or 2 episodes ago.
This specific coffee?
Yeah, Jamaican blend, double strong, double sweet, or whatever you get.
Yeah, I think that's his Earl Grey. I think he
That's
says
his
it every
Earl
time.
Grey. Interesting. I had somewhere I wanted to go with that, but like, Harry Kim. You know what Harry Kim's drink?
Which one?
The one where he was on the planet. Remember when he like ended up back in this other timeline, where he didn't go to the Delta Quadrant? Right.
Oh no, I was saying which Harry Kim?
Oh, the original one.
Okay, OG.
OG Harry Kim. He liked Vulcan Mocha triple sweet.
I bet he did.
Great.
Well, hey, I'm just saying.
That sounds like something a child would drink. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So do you think? All right, I have a couple questions with this episode. Do you think this episode would have worked in the Next Generation when you have a character like Data on the senior staff? Would this episode have worked?
Like, could this could have been a TNG script as easily as it could have been a Deep Space Nine script? I think, right? So it's,
absolutely, sure.
But at the same time, wouldn't they just like lure the sleeper agent into the holodeck?
You think so? But what if it was O'Brien? Like literally like the same script, but it's on the Enterprise. I mean, you could have done that. I mean, there's no reason it had to be the space station.
Like, what was their plan? Like, we're gonna intentionally sabotage the upper pylons, and then we're gonna make him work on that, even though he just came back from this important security meeting, and he's gonna think it's weird as hell that we're doing this, right? Like,
and how do they know he's a replicant? Like,
they don't.
They,
it's like a tip. They have a tip. And that's it.
Yeah, but like everybody acts as if they're so sure. There's nobody that's like, no, that's the real O'Brien. Everybody's like, yeah, I just can't prove it, but he's definitely a replicant. Like nobody seems to be on his side at all. Everybody is like positive. Even Odo, when he originally was on his side.
Why couldn't they fake and just go with him?
Yeah,
they could have kept tabs on him.
Yeah, they kind of had he said he was excited to have Odo as an ally. He says that in one of his voiceovers. It would have been smart to have let Odo go with him in the runabout, I would think.
Well, there was a deleted scene where O'Brien, the replicant O'Brien, was singing the Minstrel Boy like he had in the Next Generation episode, The Wounded, where he says it's his happy...
With the Jamaican accent, and he had a steel pan.
Yeah, so he sang the Minstrel Boy in a Jamaican accent.
The agent was a Jamaican.
Yeah, that's his happy thought song for bad situations, he tells the computer.
That would have been great.
The Minstrel Boy to the war is gone in the ranks.
So this replicant, they basically was able to copy all of his brainwaves.
Mm-hmm.
He's a perfect copy.
Perfect copy, yeah.
And that's O'Brien that they killed.
And never revisited ever again. And it's very convenient for this episode. Like, oh, they could just build perfect robot replicants. Well, I thought Data was the hardest thing ever to build.
Well, he's not a robot.
Basically have LMDs.
He's not he's more like a Cylon, I think, right? I guess.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Cylon.
He's exactly like a Cylon.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Toasters.
I mean, right. I think they ripped off Battlestar Galactica before Battlestar Galactica.
Well, I'm also reading some trivia here, and it's saying, I know we're not fun facts, but it's also talking about Invasion of the Body Snatchers being a theme here, and an inspiration. A couple of, this is not it's a pretty standard science fiction trope that I don't think belongs to any one franchise.
No, and they've done this. They've done this kind of you're in a weird reality in Star Trek 100 times. Yeah. I think this is one of the first times, though, that it wasn't a holodeck or a bubble, or it was the person was different.
Yeah,
exactly.
What we needed in this episode was I don't know, Odo going, Gaius fracking Baltar. Or Kira going, thank the prophets.
Have you guys ever seen a movie called Imposter? Came out 2001.
Who's an imposter?
Gary Sinise, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Gary Sinise was the bad guy. Had to be.
He's the main character, I think.
He's the bad guy.
Yeah,
Well,
he's probably-
this movie, or sorry, this episode also really reminded me of that movie with Michael Douglas. What's that called? The Game or
The Game,
something?
yeah.
Yeah, like it had like, even though that's not a science fiction story per se, like it has a lot of the same sort of like, is the entire world gone insane
right.
kind of feel to it,
Right.
right?
Yes. Oh yeah. Or like a Vanilla Sky, like with the Tom Cruise movie, where
Yeah.
you're like, you're on his side, and then you have to come to the realization at the end of the story that he was crazy and wrong, kind of like he was wrong the whole time, and
Yeah,
You know.
unreliable narrator.
unreliable narration. Mr. Robot does a lot, plays with a lot of this stuff, and it's fun. It's a really great, awesome television trope. Yeah, I think.
It just comes across so sloppy in this. Why did they go out of the way to lock certain personal logs? Of course, after a certain point, he's going to stumble upon them. He's suspicious already, right? It just seems like they left a lot of breadcrumbs for him to kind of, like, unless they were smart enough to craft a narrative for him, right, to keep him distracted. That would be one thing, but it's just like, oh well, we're just going to block access to him, or we're going to cause an accident in the upper pylons that, of course, when he investigates, he's going to notice that it was purposely done that way, which will heighten his suspicion, right? We're going to talk and lie to him throughout our many conversations. Oh, we're going to make a lie about Jake and not going to tell Jake about it. So Jake tells him the truth, and he gets more suspicious. It's just stuff like that. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard.
but right, but they have to subvert the audience to think. To me, like there wasn't at a point where it wasn't until like the very end where I thought, oh, okay, this isn't O'Brien. I thought it was like O'Brien in like a holodeck, or he was in a different, environment. So I think that was the kind of like looky loo for me. So I was like, oh, of course it wouldn't make sense if they're in a holodeck or whatever, and then they could change the program to be whatever, right? So
I gotta ask at the end, why are O'Brien and Bashir behind a door?
I don't know.
They could have just
why
left the door
they-
open.
Yeah, why isn't the door open?
And when they all right, also when they shoot the replicant O'Brien, no blood comes out. It's like kind of like a robot. Like it looks like kind of like sparks fly out of him, right? And I thought to myself, well, if they can, I thought he was going to be flushed in blood, because I was like, well, if that's the case, if it was like sparks are coming out of him, then
He didn't really explain, like,
Should be able
because
to
he was
scan
able to pass the fact that he passed the physicals to me says he's not a robot or any kind of mechanical device. He's some kind of biological organism, right? The sparks coming out, we don't know enough about Paradins or their weapons, so I guess that's a plausible reason. It's just like, why he's dying on the ground, Jeff? Like they're all just having kind of this conversation where they're telling the audience like what's been going on this whole time. They're like, he must have thought we were crazy, and Bashir's like, I don't think we could save him. He doesn't even try to make him more comfortable. They're just kind of like, whatever,
He just lays there with a stunned look on his face for like a minute and a half, and nobody helped him at all.
No,
Look,
he's just dying there going, oh, I'm fake.
Look, it won't be for many years until we have the Janeway episode with the Doctor, where they delete his memories because he couldn't get over, saving Harry Kim and killing 2 other people or whatever, right? And so we kind of have an understanding of how Starfleet captains view artificial intelligence. They have no regard for them. Only Data is the only one that
worth anything.
Yeah, that they really consider human. And Star Trek constantly does this, where they're like, you're striving to be human, and until you're human, then you've made it, right? But when they deal with like an O'Brien who's a replicant, they're like they really just treat him like they could throw him in a dumpster and they'd be like, okay,
If he
dinner's
dies,
ready.
he dies.
You know.
Well, I think that's kind of what the way they portray humans in Star Trek's like sort of fundamental flaw is that they're constantly trying to convince you their way is the best way.
So
right?
humans are Jehovah's Witnesses in Star
A
Trek.
little bit.
Keiko tried to make him his favorite meal. It's not her fault he wouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she could have been less weird about it.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot less weird about
You
it.
could have pretended to eat it.
She's like, "Aren't you going to eat it?" Hmm?
Aren't you gonna eat it?
Should
You
have
want to go lay
stink faced
down?
the entire episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right
She's
after
like,
she
"We're-"
was like, "I'm not in the mood for your moves, O'Brien."
She's like,
Maybe-
where? He's like,
Well, maybe she was being weird and kind of bitchy because that's the way she is. So if she didn't want to arouse his suspicion,
yeah, she was.
Yeah, it wasn't that weirded him out. It was the fact that she wasn't being nice to him that weirded him
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. that will
she goes,
that
"Yeah, but it's
will
different."
that will put up the guard of any guy.
It's like
when
what
a
I
girl
do.
is being if a girl's being overly nice. Yeah, your suspicions go up.
It's like, what did I do?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. So what's wrong with her?
I have
Yeah.
another question. We also find out that O'Brien's birthday is in September, Jeff. And I want to know, is he a Virgo or is he probably a Libra, you think?
Well, that depends if he's born in the early part of the month or the later part of the month.
Yeah, I would guess. I'm going to go with Libra.
I'm gonna say it doesn't matter either way.
Way to sell that, Jeff. Way to sell that. It doesn't matter. It's not important. But good
It's
question.
important.
Good question.
What? The- Kevin, what are your feelings on horoscopes?
Slightly better than what Jeff said.
Better or
No.
worse than the Bajoran?
He wants to say worse right now, but he's holding back.
Yeah, he's trying not to offend.
That's okay though. But we're talking about whispers here on Deep Space 9 and 9. Whispers. This episode was directed by Les Landau, guys. Done a lot of work on Star Trek. A lot of work.
We did a lot of work on this episode.
Tapestry. He directed that. He directed lots of other great Star Trek episodes on all the shows, really, for the most part. Yeah. So I think he did a good job in this. The episode flows in a really great way. So, do you want to get to fun facts? We have anything else to say?
Yeah,
Jaemeel?
like
What? Yeah. Go ahead.
oh, I didn't mean to. Sorry, I spoke at the exact wrong time.
No, you didn't. No, go ahead.
I was saying, yeah, let's get to fun facts, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. Fun facts.
Fun facts with Jody.
Oh, whoops. Jeff, yeah.
Fun facts with Jody. Jody.
There you go.
Okay, here we go.
This is my Chris impersonation.
Fun fact with Jeff.
Oh, that's not good, Jeff.
Writer Paul Robert Coyle, original idea for this episode involved O'Brien waking up one morning to find Molly and Keiko gone, and nobody on the entire station remembers him ever being there. He then finds out there is a Chief Miles O'Brien in Starfleet, but he is serving on the USS Enterprise D, and the end of the episode entails him trying to sort out the mystery.
Remember me.
So it's going to be kind of like a crossover between TNG and
It sounds a little bit like that Harry Kim story too,
right.
with the double mocha, the Vulcan mocha.
Okay. The flashback structure was added by the in-house staff after Coyle had submitted his draft as a way to expand the story.
Pat,
So I guess it was a short story.
they needed 3 more or like 5 more minutes.
Yeah, the flashback stuff.
Not the flashback stuff. The flashback stuff was the actual narrative. The stuff in the exposition in the shuttlecraft was what was added on to create the flashback structure.
Okay, right. That's a lot of the episode. One of the ships listed in the arrival roster is the C-57D on a lunar expedition captained by J.J. Adams. This is the ship from Forbidden Planet, 1956. I don't know what that
Okay.
is.
Is he related to J.J. Abrams?
No, J.J. Adams.
Okay, just checking.
Leslie Nielsen.
The runabout Mekong is introduced as a replacement for the Ganges, which was destroyed. So we're on to our second runabout, which will surely get
These
destroyed.
runabouts don't matter. No one cares which river runabout they're flying this week. It's the same set.
Excuse me, Dave. You're the one that cares so much about uniforms and continuity and ships, and you should care about these runabouts. They're just as important.
I do care, but they
hatred for shuttlecraft as you do runabouts.
I just feel like the runabout set is so limited. You know, it's like this little cockpit. It's just like they never show you the rest of the ship. It's actually more limited than a shuttlecraft in some ways in terms of the interior set. It's that's my issue with it as a set piece.
Okay.
This episode marks the second of two appearances of actress Susan Bay as Admiral Rollman.
Susan Day?
Susan Bay.
Oh, Bay.
Okay, so we got another rule of acquisition, guys. Tentatively, we don't know if it's the actual correct number. It's a higher number, 194, maybe. It's always good to know about new customers before they walk in your door.
Okay, but Quark's supposed to know his rules of acquisition, Jeff, and he was vague on this one. So was he slipping, or was he just playing it cool with Replicant O'Brien?
I think he was just playing it cool. He knows the rules of acquisition.
Yes, he definitely knows the rules of acquisition, and I don't think Quark cares whether or not O'Brien was a replicant or human. He's still a paying customer.
Oh, 100%. They didn't even tell Quark. Quark didn't care.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, Quark would not have never have
It would have
cared.
been better if Quark did know that something might be up.
Quark
And
was the only one treating him normally.
he's like, "Hey, you wanted to go have that rematch with Bashir? If I can run more gambling, I'm gonna love it. I can make more deals as a bookie."
You should have had him sign over. It's like, O'Brien, I'm with you. What you need to do is you sell off your possessions to me, right? And like find a way to trick him.
Yeah, well, that's the next fun fact that Quark refers to the Bashir O'Brien racquetball match that happens in Rivals. So we got that. Jadzia Dax only speaks off screen in this episode, as Dave alluded to earlier. In O'Brien's playback of a vocal station log, she appears briefly as Bashir ambushes O'Brien in ops.
Oh, do you know the other thing I did notice was the fact that O'Brien, when he goes for his physical, is got this this outfit on, right? That they wear in sickbay. Here, I have a picture of it here.
The pink stripe.
With the pink stripes. But remember, I need to apologize to Terry Farrell because this does sew up in the back. We don't see it here in this photo, but there was like a stitching all up on the back, she said she was in a surgical gown that wouldn't close in the back when she came back from that mission where where Odo was turned into the monster thing. Yeah, so it does. So yeah, and I said there are no surgical gowns with no sewed up backs, but apparently there are. But apparently O'Brien's will close up in the back, whereas Dax's will not.
Well, maybe it's different for the females. Okay, so one of the Packlets could be seen on the promenade sitting next to Jake Sisko. So Jake getting friendly with the Packlets.
Yep.
Why do Packlets wear gardening gloves?
It's unknown.
To make them strong.
Oh, that's so great.
To keep their hands soft.
Yeah, they have to moisturize every half hour.
Was that guy friends with Jake?
I guess so, but there are a lot of them in Deep Space Nine. I never realized.
Yeah, a lot of Packlets.
But just throw these guys in the makeup and throw them on the station and make it look good. It's good dressing.
And then they turn out to be a villain in Lower Decks. Spoilers.
Yeah. Okay, the Starship Arrival roster was created by the art department and features numerous Starship names and assignment information. And this takes place in 2370.
This is the final. This is during the 7th season of Next Gen.
Right. Okay, so the DS9 crew discussed the possibility of invasion by enemy replicants. Although this name is often associated with Philip K. Dick, it appears nowhere in Dick's works. It was created by the makers of the Dick-inspired film Blade Runner as a synonym for Dick's use of androids, which Blade Runner's writers considered to be too familiar and overused to hold the public's interest. Blade Runner itself was created to replace Dick's generic bounty hunter for the same reason.
Dick-inspired, yeah.
Dick-inspired film. This episode bears many similarities to Philip K. Dick's 1953 story Imposter, which the film has been made twice. Out of This World Imposter in 1962 and Imposter 2001.
I forgot all about Philip K. Dick. Yes.
And that is it for Fun Facts with Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, let's rate this episode. Okay, who wants to go first? Kevin.
7.
Hey, did I actually give you a rating?
No.
Meal?
6.5.
All right, Jeff.
8.3.
Oh, you're going with the IMDb rating. Okay. And I don't know. It's okay. It's for me. It's like a 7.2. So that averages between the four of us at 7.3. It has an 8.3 on IMDb and a 7.8 overall between those two scores. So it's above average, well above average, actually, for what we've watched so far. We also have next episode, Jeff and Jaemeel and Kevin, is Paradise. Do you remember this episode?
No, which episode is
Not by its name.
It's an episode that stands out to me quite a bit because it's a depiction. There's some torture going on here, and some more serious issues, I'd say. And Avery Brooks getting to do some interesting scenes. I think there's an interesting villain in this story. So I think there's a lot we're going to be talking about next week in those themes.
Right, but yet again, another episode that will have a heavy amount of O'Brien. So that's 3 episodes in a row where we're going to have a lot of O'Brien.
He's going to go off doing a movie again.
And then he's going to make a movie. He's going to go do Die Hard 2. Or no, he already did that.
But Con Air is not far away.
Con Air.
He'll be doing Con Air while he's still on the show.
Mm-hmm.
He's in some other stuff. I don't know. I can't remember everything Colomini did in the 90s, but it was quite a bit. He was busy. He was doing quite a bit of work during these years. But he somehow did it all.
Under Siege,
which is
94.
I'd have to look him up.
92.
Yeah, he was busy.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's kind of that's it. I guess we're done with the ratings.
Well, we did those, yes.
Yeah.
So all right. So are we gonna call it for the Deep Space Nine and 9ish?
I think so. I think we've covered it. So yeah,
okay. Do you have anything you want to pitch, Dave, for coming up this week?
Sure.
Live Long and Podcast.
If you follow us here on Live Long and Podcast, we got some great content. You know, if you like Star Trek, we do. That's all we do here. So D Space Nine here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, original series with our dad, Ted, called the Ted Trek series. This week we're doing Who Mourns for Adonais, which is an episode we did on Star Trek Radio Theater, where I did a fantastic version of Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott, worth going back and listening to, if you ask me. Also, on Thursdays we do Star Trek Discovery, and we're actually getting into the final episodes here in season 3. I don't know if you've been watching it, guys, but it has been great so far. I think there's been a lot of good things to say about the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery compared to the earlier seasons, in my opinion. We have Michael Chan and Adam Woodward on that one. That's a great one, and sometimes Jane. And then on the weekends, we have Star Trek Radio Theater. We are going to be doing another production this weekend. We haven't picked the day yet, we actually have to talk about, the four of us have to talk about that right after we get off the air here. Who's doing what? Because Jaemeel, there's a spot for you if you want it in this next one. Because we're doing Deep Space Nines. We're actually doing Deep Space Nine. Actually, we're going to be doing the Jem'Hadar, which is the season finale of this season 2. It's gonna be many weeks till we talk about it, but we're gonna be doing a production of it first, and then also in a couple of weeks or so on December 12th, we're going to be doing our season 1 finale of Star Trek Radio Theater, which is Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home. We're going to be doing that's going to be the first time we've ever done like a 2-hour movie. Jaemeel, you're going to be there. Kevin, Jeff, myself, my wife, Ashley Millard, Michael Chan, Jessica Chan, Jody Simpson, Mott Tyrell. It's going to be quite the thing, I think. So really looking forward to that. Check that out on December 12th. And what else am I forgetting? Our other channels, Trivial Debates, which we just did our November edition on Sunday. We had Chris Seymour, we had Adam Woodward, and we had Jody Simpson competing with Jaemeel. You were hosting that one. Without spoiling it, I will say it was quite the battle, and great job, and some interesting debates did occur. So, and our other channel
points.
Chris got on the board, at least. Yeah. I can say that much. And then with our other channel, Super Mater Brothers Podcasting, where we cover Survivor, Big Brother, other shows like Westworld. We're not really doing anything at the moment, but go back and check all that stuff. And then we'll be back when the new seasons hit. All right. That's it, Jeff.
That's it. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on Deep Space Nine and Nine-ish. Join us next week when we cover, what was it, Promised Land, or what was it called? I forget.
Paradise.
Paradise. All right, that was close enough. All right, so see you next week. Live long and podcast.